So I'm only going to be seeing the results of this in 3 months' time. For you, it's coming up next. Looks kind of ridiculous in this part. There was quite some resistance with this plant coming out of this planter, and then I realized it had to be that the roots have grown into the reservoir and now it's struggling to come out. So we're probably going to lose some roots, but I'm going to try with the big ones at least to take them out properly. But it doesn't look like I can. Let's have a look. I'm just going to try and pull it out. And the stem. Goeiemorgen, goeiemiddag, goeienaand. Whether it is morning, afternoon, or evening where you are, it's always a good time to watch some plant YouTube. My name is Shanae, and I enjoyed Wednesday's video so much that I decided today we'll do the same thing. So we are going to look at plants that was in a little bit of a terrible state. I do what I think needs to be done to rehab the plant, and then we'll skip to the future. 3 months later, we'll see what that plant looks like. Spoiler alert, like last week, some of the plants are doing absolutely well, and then some of them not so much. So without further ado, let's get into today's video. All right, so I think the first plant that we are going to be looking at today is actually one that have been battling a pest. So it's actually coming at a good time because currently I am struggling with spider mites. And spider mites not in the grow tent because there's a lot of high humidity and spider mites don't do well in a high humidity type of setup, but I'm seeing them in my ambient conditions. Like over here, I just treated this plant a couple of days ago, and this one is the Dean McDowell, which there was a couple of spider mites. There wasn't a full infestation yet, but just a few on my Philodendron gloriosum. There were a couple, and also on the El Choco Red, there was a couple. All of those plants actually had spider mites last year, so I don't know if the spider mite somehow went dormant, and now that the conditions is right for it, it is now popping up everywhere. But in any case, I am treating them. I think I did mention I go through my entire collection with a flashlight almost every night and put off all the lights, just go with the flashlight and just check all of the plants to see if I can see some spider mite webbing. The flashlight actually makes it a lot easier to spot that kind of webbing. So from the naked eye, it's a little bit difficult, but when a light shines on it, you can see it much easier. But in any case, the plant that we are going to be looking at today actually doesn't have spider mites, it has scale. Like you'll probably hear me say in the video, that's the one pest that I actually don't mind, and I'll go into a little bit more detail as to why I'm saying that. But in any case, let's go back 3 months where we can look at the Anthurium Hoffmanii cross Forgetii and what the pest did on that plant then and what I've done to rehab the plant. So let's go and see what we've done 3 months ago. So absolutely beautiful plant, and I probably have shown it on this channel quite a few times. I absolutely love the new emergent that comes out. It's really dark green color, but it even hardens off to a very dark, very dark green color. But the new emergent, I don't know if you are able to see in the screen, but the new emergent also has some red veining, very prominent red veining, and that is because the veining at the back is also red, so it kind of creeps through. But it's also nice, the Forgetii is coming through on this plant, and it seems like it's doing that with every new leaf, some more round sinus comes. Like if you look at this one, this is the first one that I've noticed a semi-fused sinus. So you'll see that it's only this little bit that has the fused sinus and a little bit of the top is open. But then this one has much more. So it only has this little heart on top, But I'm hoping that the next leaf is going to have a full sinus, so at least the next 2 or 3 leaves. So hopefully with every new leaf, it's going to get even more rounder. But in any case, beautiful plant. But as you can see at the bottom, the leaves are not looking as beautiful. So part of this is just the fact that the leaves are old. Part of it is that these leaves were here when I moved. So during the winter move, it didn't like that. So that's why the leaves are also, browning at the tip. But the other thing that you probably won't be able to see so far away from the camera is that this plant has pests. Yes, this plant has a pest. Even though the leaves look so pristine, this plant has pests. And it's the one pest that I am okay with. Let me rephrase that. If I were to choose any pest to have on my plants, then I'll probably prefer this one. And this is scale. In the juvenile form, the pest is quite mobile. So it can move from one leaf to another, from one plant to another. But once it reaches maturity, it kind of just picks a spot on a plant, on a leaf, and just stick and creates kind of like a hard type of casing around it, and that's where it'll stay for the rest of its life. It's really easy to detect as well as treat the mature scale. So just a warning, I'm going to bring the plant up close to the screen so that you can see what scale looks like. So that if you have scale in the future, you know exactly what to look out for. So if you do not want to see scale, this is the time that you should be looking away. I'm going to let you know when I am backed up away from the camera so you can continue watching again. So let me show you on the sleeve over here. Is it focusing? Yeah. So here you can see is where the scale is sitting. So right there, and right there, that is scale. All right, I'm better. Those who looked away, you can look again. So the easy treatment for these ones is I normally use a pesticide. This is the only pesticide that I actually have in the house. And this is called Rose Protector. So the adult scale, like I said, is quite easy to treat. So I just use this earbud, or Q-tip I think it's also called. And I spray the pesticide on here, and then I literally just remove the scale from the leaf, and the plant should be okay. But the damage that they leave is it's not like spider mites where you can see that there is, those spots that they leave. This one, after a very long time, then you'll only see that the leaf is going. New leaves, they don't really damage that much. And that is the reason why I am okay with having them. So like I say, I just take the Q-tip, spray the pesticide on them, and then just swipe them off. And they come off quite easily. But if they are bad, then I prefer to just cut them off and remove them completely from the plant. Sometimes they are a little bit translucent, so you won't be able to see the scale on there. So even though I'm pushing those ones that I could see off, there is a possibility that there is some other ones on there as well. So with this one, seeing that the leaves are already old, I'm just going to cut them off, and then I'm going to treat these ones, so the new leaves that is still looking good. I'm just going to treat them with a pesticide. If there are smaller ones on here that is still mobile, the pesticide should be able to take care of them. I'll also take maybe a cotton pad and just wipe the leaf so that I can also get rid of them that way. This leaf is completely hardened so that wiping is not going to damage it at all. And yeah, so let's quickly do the chopping of the leaves first. It doesn't look like this one has it on there, but it's an old leaf. So it's good that it's only on those 2 leaves basically. So I'll quickly throw this away in the bin so that I don't touch any pests and doesn't go onto other plants. And then we'll be back to continue. Alright, so like I said, with these new leaves, I have inspected them closely. They don't look like they have any of the scale on them, or at least not the mature ones that I can see that has already fixed itself onto the leaf. But what I'm going to do is just spray them, take this cotton pad and just wipe it so that if there is any younger ones, then it kind of gets rid of those. And what scale also does is they like to sit on the petiole of the leaf. I don't see any of them on here, but I also wipe that off. So if you do suspect that there's scale, also make sure that you wipe the petiole. Even the peduncle, you can wipe off just to make sure that there is nothing on there. Like I said, the immature scale is mobile, so they can walk from leaf to leaf. So the ones that is surrounding your plant that you found scale on, also treat that. So similarly, check for adult scale, use your Q-tip to take them off, or if you are able to just cut the leaf off completely, wipe the leaves off and then also the petiole of the leaf. So let me quickly do this so that I can just show you. I normally do this in the bathroom, to be quite honest, because this smells really bad. And I have all of the windows and the doors open so that the smell is not so bad. I actually should be doing this with a mask, to be quite honest. But I kind of just wipe it off like that. And don't forget to spray and wipe the back as well, because that's pretty much also where pests like to sit. We are good. So what I'm also going to do, I am just going to use my spray in the bathroom and I'm going to spray off these leaves real quickly. I'll be back in a second. Alright, so the leaves are washed. I also have another problem. I also wash my hands, which is good because I like to touch my face. But yeah, leaves are washed. The other problem is this pot. This pot is not set up with a wick where it can be considered a self-watering pot. I need to water this plant pretty much every 2 days because the substrate does dry out that quickly. And I really don't want to do that. And I am going on a trip I'm actually going on a few trips in the next couple of months. So I'm not going to be here to water this plant every 2 days. So it is best that I repot it in a self-watering pot that has a wick, and then it can wick up water, and I literally just have to water not every 2 days, but once a month, which is going to be amazing. So let's quickly do that. This pond is still okay, so I am going to reuse it as well for this specific plant and top up if needed. So I'm going to put it in this pot that I always like. It has a nice wick in here that we are definitely going to use. So we'll do that. And then we are going to take out the pond from, we're going to take out the pond. But I don't think I'm going to put it in the pot with the other pond. Let me get another 5-liter bucket and then I'll throw it in there and I can reuse it. Alright, so I found the emptied bucket. So let's quickly throw the pond in here. there was quite some resistance with this plant coming out of this planter, and then I realized it had to be that the roots have grown into the reservoir and now it's struggling to come out. So we're probably going to lose some roots, but I'm going to try with the big ones at least to take them out properly, but it doesn't look like I can. Anywho, let's see. Alright, so I kind of just took off some of the leca. So the leca was at the bottom, so when I threw it into this bucket, the leca was then at the top. So I kind of just took some of the bigger pieces that I could find that is laying on top, and I'll put it at the bottom of this pot. I don't think that I want to do anything with this plant. I think I'm not going to clean the roots at all. They look very, very healthy. You can even see the pink roots over there. And I'm going to put it in here a little bit small. The stem is actually quite long, and I don't think I'm going to pollinate this plant anytime soon. So maybe I can actually take a cutting of it as well. Let me do that. Let me quickly go and clean the scissors. Right, so our scissors is clean, so I'm just going to do a chop and pop on this plant, and let me come closer so I can show you. You can see that the stem is really long and there's a lot of roots at the bottom that would be able to sustain if I do a cut pretty much here, and there's at least 2 growth points that I can see. So let me do that. Let me do the cut. So we have 2 plants. Could have more if I wanted to, but I don't, because I want the plant to grow nice and big. So I'm going to be happy with just having this prop as well. Okay, so let's put this one in the pot and pot it up. I'm going to leave it for a couple of minutes. I'm going to quickly go and have lunch. When I come back, I think the stem would have calloused over, because if I put it in the semi-hydro and I water it, that is going to get wet. There's going to be a possibility of root rot. So let me go and do that. Alright, so it's been more than an hour already, and the stem is definitely calloused over. Even this one seems quite dry, so that's good. So let's continue with our potting up. So like I said, I'm just going to use the same substrate, but I just want to quickly check the pot sizes. So this one is definitely going to go in here, and there is going to be more than enough space for it to grow. This one actually has quite a lot of roots. I will probably do a root prune, so it's not going to be long. For the small pot, for the pot that is just the size lower than this, it is going to be a little bit too small. So we probably need a pot like this as well. Yeah, we need another pot like this. So I'll get that in a second, but we can pot this one up so long. This one wasn't semi-hydro, so I don't think I'm going to take off any other roots there. So I'm just going to pot it as is. It should also be interesting to see. A lot of people say you shouldn't repot a plant while it is in flower. So it's going to be interesting to see what that flower does over the next couple of days now that the repot has actually taken place. So I'll give you an update if I remember on that as well. So I think that's good. Hopefully the next one is going to come here and it's going to fill in the space in the middle. Alright, so this one is all potted up, so we'll give it a little bit of water. This one we will continue to also give it a reservoir and nutrients. So, because the roots is a little bit more shallow and I've put it a little bit lower in the pot, there is still some left for this one. So let me quickly go and grab a pot and then we'll pot up that one. Alright, so I got the pot, which is the same size as that one. I think it is going to be good for it to get some more space for the roots to expand. So I'll put in the wrap, put in some substrate and bottom. Plant in, plant goes in. Looks kind of ridiculous in this pot. Let's go with that. Like I say, it looks quite ridiculous in this pot, but I think it's going to be good. It's going to grow quite big in no time. So I am going to use this tag and put it in this one because I for sure am not going to remember what this is. And I'm going to make a new tag in a second for this one. So these two, we're going to wait for the hardiger to pass. Alright, so these two are all potted up. I'm going to keep both of them in high humidity. In the future, I want to breed with this plant, so I'll definitely keep it in the grow tent. But this one is the one that is going to be grown in ambient. But I'll keep it in high humidity just until I can see a leaf or two. And let's see how this plant goes in the next couple of months. So I'm only going to be seeing the results of this in 3 months' time. For you, it's coming up next. All right, so we are now back 3 months into the future from that video, and let me show you what the plant looks like today. So this is the original plant that I cut, and it still has the old leaves on it. And as you can see, I did have to cut some of the damaged leaves away, and that was basically because the plant was kind of acclimating to the new pot, etc. So I did dry out a couple of times, so the leaf did show, or these two leaves did show some damage, but not too bad. But in the meantime, it has pushed this new leaf, and it is a little bit smaller than the previous leaf, and that's normal. If you cut a plant, it is going to take a while to just recover, grow a nice root system, and then it is going to eventually flourish. So yeah, I'm quite happy that this plant is having this bounce back. There is absolutely no pest on this one anymore that I can see, and yeah, growing quite well. So the method that I showed you over there definitely worked for this plant. And let me show you what the cutting looked like that we also did in that clip. and this is what it looks like. So it looks like there is absolutely nothing happening, and you would be correct. However, this cutting actually did so well. I think for the first month it was really working on roots, and I could see the roots forming on top as well, and I covered it a little bit so that the roots can be covered by the substrate. And in no time there was actually a new growth point that it activated, and actually there was two that got activated. One was a little bit faster than the other one. The one that grew faster actually produced a really cute leaf, but this plant was towards the back of the shelf in one of the middle shelves, and in my mind, I thought that this plant is probably not getting as much light, and seeing that it is actively growing, I wanted to give it a little bit more light. But at that time, I didn't have a space where I could place it where it can get the light that I thought it needed. And I eventually just put it on the bottom, on the floor, and it stayed there for probably a couple of weeks. And there was a plant that I was doing something to on the top shelf that was literally on top of this one, and somehow that one fell, and it literally fell on top of this plant, and it broke off the leaf completely, and that is why you can see absolutely nothing happening here. But the other growth point is activated and it's growing, so hopefully that one is going to give us a new leaf very soon. But yeah, I'm really happy to see that this one has actually also done quite well. But yeah, that is the reason why I actually don't mind scale, because they are quite easy to treat, and like I say, absolutely no more damage on this because of the scale, and scale is completely gone off of this plant. Interestingly, I did speak about other plants that I also treated that was next to that plant, and this was one of them. And this is the leaf that was pretty much covered, or at least some of them were covered in the scale, and you can probably see some of the casing still on here, but definitely no scale. I've also treated this plant, and since then there is this new leaf that also has come out, and it is also pest free, so really happy about that. And again, the scale is one of those pests that is quite easy to treat once you get a hold of the scale quite quickly. But in any case, let's move on to our next plant. Alright, so the next one that I want to talk about is my Agloanema pictum tricolour, and let's go back a couple of months to see what this plant looked like back then and what we've done to try and fix the problems that the plant has been showing us. Terrible. Look at that. Alright, so if I take over these two leaves, it actually doesn't look that bad. Maybe that one as well. But we'll keep that one on. It also has a new leaf, so it's actually not terrible. So this is my Agloanema pictum tricolour. You can't see too much of the pictum tricolour that you would be accustomed to, and I wouldn't blame you, but that is because this plant is not happy. This is another plant that is completely in leca, and even though I fill up this reservoir, the leca is not getting enough water from the wick. So I think I also need to even top water this plant every couple of days, and honestly, as you can see, I don't always get to it every couple of days like I should, as this plant would probably like me to do. So what I'm going to be doing is we are going to change it from leca to pun. I think the wick has a much better chance to wick up the water in pun as opposed to leca. I think if it was a self-watering pot that I normally use, like these ones where I can keep a reservoir at the bottom and the plant or the substrate, the leca can sit in the water and wick up the water that way, that works quite good for leca. But in this kind of pot, it actually doesn't. Let's try pon and see if that is going to work better. If not, we probably are going to have to put it in a self-watering pot with a soilless substrate, so not semi-hydro. So let's see how that works. Yeah, I think so. So we are first going to take out. So I'm first going to remove the leca from here, and we are going to use the same pot. I'm going to clean the reservoir, and then we're going to fill it up with pon, with a self-watering, or with a wick, sorry, with a wick, and yeah, let me do that first. It actually got a little pup, but even that one is not looking too great. Maybe I'll try to put this one in a soilless substrate and see how it goes in pretty much the same type of setup. And this one is actually quite big, but I think it should be fine. I think it's the smallest cup that I have. Anyways, I'm going to put this in a soilless mix, and then we're going to also compare, and we can see if that one is going to be better. But let's continue emptying this vessel. Yeah, there's a lot of roots that rotted. I think what's happening here is the plant keeps on creating new roots, and then it dies off because of dry rot, and then new roots and dry rot. But it also looks like there is a offshoot on here. All of these roots over here, which is actually the majority, actually there's more. All of these roots over here are for the offset. And then only this root essentially is for the mother plant. But I'm sure it's getting nutrients from these roots as well. I don't know how to propagate. Actually, I don't want to propagate this plant. Because what I could do, shall I try it? What I could do is propagate it, cut it here, and let roots form to sustain the top, and then maybe cut another part. I'm gonna cut it. I think, no. Alright, I just want to see if the substrate works. So I am not going to propagate this right now, as I debated with myself on. So what I'm going to just do is we are going to put this in hydro. Let's continue. Nothing happened here. So I'm quickly going to clean this vessel, and then we'll pot it in semi-hydro. Alright, so let's continue. I'm first going to get a base of the substrate down, and then we're going to pot the plant up in there. So let's go. I can actually pot it a little bit lower in the pot, so it's going to be up until that point. So hopefully there's going to be more opportunities for roots to grow from more the bottom, so that it looks less like a tree. Still going to look like a tree because there's such a big stem, but it's going to be better than from here to there. Anyways, let's get going. Alright, so I think that looks good. I have potted it all the way to the top. So I really hope that it is going to promote root growth and not rot the stem. Fingers crossed. But we'll see in, for you, a couple of minutes, for me, a couple of months. Alright, so let me show you what the plant looks like today. As you can see, not all too much different. I think since then it has worked on one new leaf, but I think it has mostly just worked on a good root system. So I think it is a good indication that the plant is not deteriorating, it's not losing its leaves, it is looking quite healthy in terms of the color of the plant. So I definitely think that what we've done actually worked. So this is one of those disadvantages of having this kind of pot. So as I also mentioned last Wednesday, the disadvantage to such a white pot, especially if you are rehabbing or repotting a plant, it is really important for you to see what the root system is actually doing. And for the first couple of weeks, first couple of months, that is exactly where all of the action is going to happen. The plant is first going to work on a new root system before it can work on anything on top. So yeah, that is pretty much it that I wanted to share on this plant again. So unfortunately, I'm not able to see exactly what the plant is doing in terms of building a good root system, but like I say, at least the top of the plant looks good and there's no indication that the plant is deteriorating. So I am going to assume that this plant is literally just working on a new root system and it is absolutely okay. So for now, we are not going to fiddle with anything else on this plant. I'm just going to wait and see what happens. If the plant does start dropping leaves all of a sudden, then I know something is not going right in terms of the root system. But now, seeing that everything looks fine, I'm going to just keep it in there for a couple of months, and then hopefully it is working on a good root system, and eventually in a couple of months, we are going to see some new leaf action happening over here. But in any case, that is the 3-month update. I cannot wait to see what this plant is going to be doing in the next 3 months. All right, so the next one that I'm going to talk about is 2 plants actually, and that is the Alocasia Tendurusa and then also the Alocasia Nobilis. So these 2 plants are actually put in one pot. That's why I'm talking about them together today. And this is what the plant looked like before. And honestly, these 2 plants have been growing so well since I actually rehabbed it, I think about 2 years ago. Both of them have been in this one pot for a very long time, and they have essentially outgrown the pot. So as you can see, or as you could see in that picture, there was a lot of leaves and it was starting to, I guess, tilt forward. And if there wasn't enough water in the pot to anchor the pot, the lean forward would be even greater. So unfortunately, one night while I was sleeping in the middle of the night, I think about 3 a.m. or about 3:30, I just heard something fall to the floor. It kind of sounded like a shattered glass, but a little bit different. You could hear that it was stones or the pond and liquor that was falling out of the plant. And I immediately knew, because I actually haven't watered that plant for I think about a week and a half, and I normally needed to water it every single week. And like I said, I 100% knew that it was that plant, but I actually didn't get up in the middle of the night. I was so tired and I just continued to sleep. I was like, I'm going to deal with it in the morning. And when I woke up in the morning, lo and behold, the plant was on the floor, the lacquer and the pond was scattered all over the tiles, and the pot was lying on one side. So yeah, the plant pretty much broke all of its leaves. I had to cut them off and then repot that. I was so, I guess, traumatized that I didn't even take a picture. I didn't film the whole process because this plant, like I said, I rehabbed it and it looked quite nice. And now that it is lying on the floor, completely broken, my heart was shattered. But in any case, I am going to show you what the plant looks like today after I've done a little bit of a repot on it. But before we get there, I think seeing that I'm talking about my shattered heart, I think it's a good time that I now talk about my t-shirt for today. So like I said in previous videos, I don't want to shop with these blank t-shirts anymore. So I've decided to make a couple of designs that I can put on my t-shirts and it can actually look like something quite nice. So this is one of the month of February designs, and all of them have the theme of love because of course we have Valentine's Day in the month of February and it's all about love essentially. So this one I have decided to name my heartbeat for plants. So as you can see down here, the wording is exactly that, and on top it is a depiction of exactly those words. So there is a heartbeat and then there's a plant in the middle of that heartbeat to kind of represent that my heart is beating for plants. And I think that is what a lot of us are experiencing when we are doing this hobby. When I got woken up by that noise in the middle of the night, my heart literally skipped a beat. And like I said, I could not muster up the courage to even grab my phone or grab a camera to film it because my heart was pretty much broken. It was shattered. But anyways, I knew that the plant was going to do well, but just to think of all of that history that or the journey that I've walked with the plant, and now I kind of have to start over, that was quite devastating. So these plants have some sort of impact on our heartbeats for sure. So I thought, let me put it on a picture. And of course, there is also a plant loving house in there because that is the name of the channel and that is the brand. But in any case, I don't sell this exact t-shirt, but I do sell the design. So I have also created some tote bags and I've put this design on the tote bag. So I will put in the description the link to my website if you are interested in checking out the tote bag collection, where I pretty much put all the designs of the month of love, the month of February on there, so you can have a look. The 4 that I'm talking about specifically is only limited to the month of February. So if you're looking for this design, you only have until the end of this month. But I also put up a QR code here so you can also scan it and it will take you to where you can purchase the tote bags with this specific design immediately. But anyways, let's get back to our alocasia story. So in the morning, I did go and do a cleanup. I took the plants off of the floor, saw the damage, had to cut off all of the leaves, and pretty much was left with a comb, or with 2 combs, one of each, of course. There was a couple of other combs that was in the pot as well. Those ones are also harvested, but I can show you that in an alocasia maintenance video that is coming up in the next couple of weeks. But in any case, this one I did decide to repot in a little bit of a bigger pot. Still went with a self-watering pot, still went with pon, but a little bit bigger, because I knew that even if the plant was going to recover, the leaves are also going to be quite large. So it doesn't make sense for me to pot those combs up in a smaller pot and have the same thing happen in a short period of time. But in any case, let me show you what the plant looks like right now. So here it is, and it is a one-leaf wonder. So only the Nobilis has started to push out a new leaf. The Jacklyn is doing its own thing. It is looking like it is pushing a new leaf. So hopefully within the next couple of weeks, I should be able to have a Jacklyn leaf as well. So this one only came out a short while ago, so it's still very floppy, and it is still going to do some hardening off and maybe some expanding as well. But in any case, I was really happy that I managed to rehab this one and that I am in the future going to still have these two plants. I absolutely love these two, and I absolutely love having the two of them together because the Jacklyn, as you guys probably know, has a very hairy texture, and spider mites is absolutely loving that. That is a good house for them to hide in. But the Nobilis, because it has more of a shiny texture, it is quite easy to see when there are spider mites on this one. So if I see spider mites on the Nobilis, I know that there are spider mites on the Jacklyn. So this one is kind of the spider mite indicator, if you will. But in any case, like I said, I'm really happy that I managed to rescue this one, and it's now looking like it is going to be doing quite okay. But in any case, yeah, Alocasia Nobilis and a growing Alocasia Jacklyn. All right, so the next one that I want to talk about is the Anthurium Forgetii. So I do have quite a number of Forgetiis in my collection, and they are pretty easygoing plants for me, but there is one that I had to do some maintenance on. So let's have a look at what that looked like and what I ended up doing, and then we'll be back to the future where we'll see what the plant looks like today. Let's go. We are going to help this plant, and this is the Anthurium Forgetii. I think I got it in the beginning of last year, and if you watch my previous videos, you would know that my plants normally size up quite a bit in a year's time, and the fact that this one hasn't definitely means that there is something terribly wrong with it. You can also see from the previous leaves, they are quite crispy. Part of that is because I moved during winter and they did not like that at all. But the other part of it is that I'm growing it in this pot. It is a self-watering pot, but I think it's best suited for more of a soil or soilless chunky mix type of substrate. And I have it in complete leca. I literally need to water this plant every 2 days or so because the leca just doesn't get the water that is in this reservoir, doesn't wick it up properly. So I think that is the one thing that we need to change. So I think what is actually happening is the plant is just dying out too frequently. I don't get to water every 2 days. So that's why you would see these crispy leaves that it has. So what we are going to be doing today to help this plant get out of this terrible state is we are going to change the pot to self-watering pot that I use, and we're also going to change the substrate. There is nothing wrong with growing in leca. I grow a lot of my plants in leca, but I think with the wick system, the pond just absorbs the water a little bit better and creates that wicking action a little bit more in the pond. So we're going to wash this leca and use it in the future. So without further ado, let's get into it. Alright, so I've gathered everything that I think we are going to need for this repot. So firstly, we are going to, of course, take the plant out of this planter, and I'm going to throw the leca in this 5-liter bucket so I can clean it and then use the leca again for future plants that I need to plant up. So let's quickly do that. And I forgot to empty the reservoir, so half of it fell on my pants. So let me quickly go to the bathroom and throw out the water in the reservoir. Alright, that's better. I saw that there's also some roots growing at the bottom of the pot, but they don't look terribly rotted, so I think we are still fine to just throw the leca in here. Alright, so the roots look quite healthy. Of course, the ones on top does look a little bit dry, and there is a little bit of dry rot on some secondary roots. So I'll maybe just quickly take that off, and then we'll immediately repot it. So let me just show you what dry rot actually looks like. So this is something that you would consider when you look at your plants. When you look at your plant's root and you think you have dry rot, this is what it will look like. Quite deflated. I think we are good to do the repot. There is some liquor balls that is falling off. There is some liquor balls that is falling off. Some of them that is kind of stuck on the roots. I'm not going to force that to go off because it's still going in semi-hydro, and a lot of the pond that I'm going to use already has some liquables in it. So actually it would help the plant as well. So let's do that real quick. But just looking at this pot, I think it is too small. So let me go and get a bigger one real quick. Alright, as you can see, this is the bigger pot. There is quite a significant difference between these two. So I think the plant is definitely going to appreciate this bigger one. Let's see. Yep, definitely in more than enough space. Should also have enough space to grow some more as well. Alright, so you guys know how I do the repotting. We are going to use the wick system. So we are going to first just put the wick in. Next up is our lacquer layer. Alright, now I have put in the lacquer, but I'm looking at the pun. It's not the chunky pun that I thought I had. Don't have any chunky pun. So we are going to change our minds. We are going to change the play. We are going to keep it because of the fact that the holes in here, or these slits, the slits in here is too wide. The small pond would just fall out of these very easily. So with the lacquer, of course, the holes are too big, so it won't do that. As well as the chunky pond, but I don't have any of those. So we are going to use all lacquer. The plant is going to be fine because it was used to it. But what I'm not going to do is a wick system for this thing. I'm going to take the wick out, and then we are going to use a non-wick system. And I have shared with you in another video what that means, but it essentially just means that I'm going to keep a water reservoir that is probably going to be about 1 centimeter or 1.5 centimeters from the bottom of this cash pot. So let's do that. Alright, so that actually looks quite good. There is even some more space for the plant to grow. So what we are just going to do next in terms of the substrate is just water it so that the liquor can get hydrated. But what I also want to do is cut off these ugly looking leaves. Looking a little bit sad with the one leaf in this big pot. But in a couple of months, I think I'm going to thank myself for doing this. For me, it is going to be quite a while, but for you, it is coming up next. Alright, so we are back to the future, and let me show you what the plant looks like today. Pretty much nothing is happening over here. So this plant was actually on a shelf that is quite high, and I thought that it would be fine because, like I said, I was going to keep a reservoir and that was going to be fine. The plant was going to get its water as it needed, and unfortunately I forgot to give the plant the necessary water, and I didn't realize until it was too late. So the roots were actually quite dehydrated by the time that I eventually gave it water. I still ended up giving it water, and when I eventually looked at it a couple of days ago, I realized that there was a lot of dry rot happening in there. So I literally just lifted the pot like this, and I could immediately see that there are deflated roots that now looks wet, and that is a good indication that the plant has rotted its roots because it has dry rotted. So that is, like I just explained, the act of drying out the roots completely and then giving it a lot of water. And because the roots then couldn't intake a lot of that water, it kind of just died. So unfortunately, it actually also does look like the stem is not looking too great, but let's have a look. I'm just going to try and pull it out. And the stem actually looks a little bit green, so there might be some hope for this one still. But as you can see, a lot of rotten roots. So let me try and get the table and also get some of these supplies and see if we can at least cut off all of the roots, because pretty much all of them are gone, and do a rehab on this one. So yeah, let me go and get everything together and then we'll come back and see what we can do about this. All right, so like I said, looking at this, there is a lot of rotten roots. I'm just gonna cut off pretty much all of its roots, and we are going to, I guess, start from scratch. So honestly, I don't know if this is going to be okay or not. It kind of feels firm, but in some places it does feel a little bit less firm. So let's try and see what is happening here. So definitely the top growth point has rotten away almost completely, but I think the middle one seems fine. So what I think I'm going to do, similar to how you would reroot a stump like this one is, I am going to just put it in one of these containers. So I've added perlite and a little bit of moss, and then I'm just going to lie it on top to see if it is going to root or whether it is just going to die. So I do have another stump in here, and some of you that would have watched the big plant maintenance would remember the Anthurium Forgetii that I cut. In the middle there was a empty space, so at the bottom there was some nice roots, at the top there was some nice roots, and then there was a trunk in the middle. And I said I'm just going to do this method where I'm going to put it in a perlite with a little bit of a moss on top and just lay it there to see what it does. And it has activated some growth. As you can see over there, there's 2 growth points that has been activated, and I think I can show you over there and then over here. No roots yet, but at least those ones look like it is quite good. So this method definitely works. So I'm just going to put this one in here as well and see if there is going to be any movement on that. So with a queen, I'm just going to wait until root form, and then I'm going to repot it once there are some roots so that I can put down in the substrate. But for now, the 2 of them are going to live happily ever after in this container, where I do close it so that it can get 100% humidity, and it is quite close to the light. I think about 1/2 meter or so, a little bit less than 1/2 meter away, so they do get a lot of bright light, and I think that is really helping, especially like you can see on the queen, to activate those growth points and hopefully activate the roots in the near future. But in any case, this is what I think we are going to do with this one, and I'm not too sad about this. I don't think that it's ever a good thing to lose a plant, but I I do have a lot of Forgetii that I absolutely love, and this one was one of the ones that was kind of duplicate. There was nothing really special in terms of the characteristics. So even though I do feel bad that I kind of neglected the plant to this point that it has to die, but again, it is part of the plant hobby. Sometimes you get plants to live and sometimes they die. So yeah, fortunately I do have a couple of other Forgetii that I can look at when I feel sad about this one. But in any case, I think that is that. Let me go and put this one back into a good spot so that it can start its new life. Alright, so that brings us to the end of today's video. I really hope that you enjoyed looking at some of my plants that didn't look too well a couple of months ago, what I've decided to do to give it a little bit of a rehab, and then seeing the results after a couple of months. So some of them not so good, some of them are doing quite okay, some of them we are still seeing what is happening. But all of this is what our plant journeys are. It's not always easy, it's not always good. Sometimes we do have to deal with pests, and that is part of the journey. It's what keeps the plant hobby interesting, I would say. But in any case, I hope that you enjoyed this one, and I would love to see you in my next one. Have a lekker rest of your day. Bye bye.